Welcome everybody to National Perspectives Evolution of the German Market. And I have the pleasure to have three absolute experts here with me today to talk about this. I mean, everybody is looking into Germany and what is happening right here. There's some great interest coming up onto that, but more than that, we have an existing industry also, so it's very interesting to see and get some up-to-date insights from today from our experts. We have on the left-hand side Peter Homburg. He's a partner at Dentons, an international law firm, and he's head of the Dentons European Cannabis Group, as well as a founding member of the European Cannabis Association. He has been working as a lawyer in the field for quite some time, and in pharmaceutical law before that, and has following the legalization process for quite some time, also from a legal perspective. Then in the middle we have Kai Friedrich Niermann. Kai has been a business and corporate lawyer in Germany since 2003. He has started a legal blog. It's called Cannabis Legal, with all relevant information and for THC and CBD industry. And Kai is also an advisor to the European hemp industry, the IHA, and which are working on a joint novel food application at the moment with Kai's support. And here we have Dr. Cornelius Maurer. Dr. Cornelius Maurer is the economist of the three founders of Demecan, and he's one of the three managing directors. He's responsible for finance and procurement, sales and marketing, fundraising, and has worked with the BFRAM and but now, more recently, Cornelius also started looking into venture funding. Yeah. So let's get started straight away. So Kai, let's start with you. There's this ongoing discussion about cannabis reform, but maybe before we dive into that, let's have a quick look into the medical area and into CBD. What's your stance on that?
You mean in regard to the upcoming legalization?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think I will concentrate on the CBD side of things. CBD is very, very complicated right now. Since the European Union decided in 2019 to put CBD on the novel food catalog, so the member states of the EU decided that CBD extracts are novel food. And Germany enforced this novel food directive since 2019. Very slowly, we had the hype in 2019, 2020, 21, and then the law enforcement took place, and you will hardly find any CBD product, CBD oil, labeled as food or as a food supplement on the German shelves of the big retailers right now. And the last resort was the cosmetic oral care product, kosmetisches Mundpflegespray. So at first it was labeled as a supplement, and the second step was aroma, and the third step was aroma extract, and the last resort was now the cosmetic oral product. Last week we got a ruling from the Administrative Court of Düsseldorf saying that the ban of this product was illegal. The court in Düsseldorf was referring to the court in Hamburg, which also said that the ban of this product, the distribution ban, was illegal. And now we have the situation that you can trade CBD oils in Hamburg and Düsseldorf, but not in Berlin and not in the south of Germany. This is due to the structure of the health authority oversight in Germany, which makes it also very, very complicated. And I don't see any solution of that. So you have with this ruling, you have 2 to 3 years time to the main proceedings, and probably by that the applications of IHA and different other players at the EU Commission for authorizing CBD extract as a novel food will take place. So it's due to the legalization efforts, it's still very hard to sell CBD, and the CBD market is very, very complicated, and it doesn't make any difference if you look at the legalization which is coming up.
That's why I started with this question. So maybe to to show you also that we have an existing market where we are still facing a lot of challenges here in Germany that are independent of all these legalization efforts that are currently talked about. But maybe, Peter, could you explain what is the envisioned two-pillar model that we see, and what are the two pillars, and what did the German government propose for that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Lisa, for the kind introduction. I think everybody in this room expected some good news from Germany moving into recreational. I'm afraid we don't have this good news. Let's look into what has happened since 2022. As you may have followed, the German government in 2022, in October 2022, released a position paper in which they clearly outlined in which way legalization of recreational cannabis, and let's call it recreational cannabis for adult use, and you just say recreational cannabis in Germany. It was very clearly outlined in which way Germany would cultivate, distribute, and of course even control the use of cannabis under the government control. That was the plan. The government noticed that this may in conflict with certain laws, in particular with the Schengen Agreement, which is the basis of the European Union, and actually forwarded this pilot paper together with an explanation and its arguments why they actually turned around from a prohibition policy to a legalization policy to the European Commission, expecting that they at least not agree, but I would say not. It's not a formal process. So the European Commission looked at the paper and at the arguments, and the arguments were very much the same as Canada has used them for the legalization of recreational cannabis as well, which is better control of the distribution of the cannabis for recreational purposes to protect the youth, better control for the consumers to get high quality products to the respective user, and of course to attack the illicit market. The same arguments have been used here. Well, the European Commission said, actually, no, this is going to violate the Schengen Agreement. If you implement that in Germany, we are going to initiate the respective proceedings before the European Court of Justice for breach of contract of the Schengen Agreement. So Germany turned around, and now here comes the two new pillar project. It was released in April. The two pillars are as follows. Pillar number one, Germany is going to allow the home grow of up to 3 female plants for every adult, number one. Number two, Germany is going to allow the establishment of cannabis clubs. I would call it cultivation associations, because that's what it really is. Each club, each association can have up to 500 members and can grow cannabis for their members for recreational purposes under very strict control. Number three of that first pillar is that cannabis and THC-related products will be taken out of the German Narcotics Act and will be actually transferred to that new Cannabis Act with some impact also on the medical market, which we may discuss in a minute. This is pillar number one. A respective law has been leaked, a draft law has been leaked. It's not yet released officially. We have had a look at that. And of course, there are a number of questions with regard to the implementation of how is this actually working? How does the Cannabis Cultivation Association really be controlled? Who is going to decide where and what is going to be cultivated? So how it's financed, because it's a non-profit organization. I think that's important to know. It should be a non-profit organization. So for every investor in this room, this is bad news, actually, because they should not make any money. So this is the first pillar. Let me just introduce the second pillar, if you allow, Lisa. The second pillar is that Germany will start scientific pilot projects, which are, as we all know, allowed under the UN conventions and the Schengen Agreement, under specific scientific control, where distribution will be done through properly licensed shops or licensed distributors, to those who have been registered and are going to use cannabis for recreational purposes. This is not yet even a draft law, it's just a plan. Probably the draft law will be released after the summer break later this year. With regard to the cannabis clubs or the cannabis cultivation associations, just two more facts. Number one, there will be a limit of 30 grams per month for adults of up to 21. So between 18 and 21, we have the possibility to get 30 grams at a THC level of 10% or below. Oops. Number two, adults can actually purchase 50 grams with no THC limits from those cannabis cultivation associations. So that's what the current draft law says. Whether it will be implemented in such way is of course questionable. It's now discussed between the ministries and will be actually forwarded to the cabinet, probably not before the summer break, which starts in 14 days.
Thank you. So Cornelius, as one or as the only true German cultivator in Germany, what is your stance on the current status of the industry, and what are you looking for in the future?
Good morning, Good morning, everybody. So let's try it here. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, to see you all, and thank you for having us on this panel. I'd like to start with telling you a little bit about our story and I think the biggest challenges we faced in the German market, and then go to the evolution and a forecast of what the German market could look like. So I think the biggest milestone in Germany we saw in the past 5 years was the building of a national, the domestic supply chain. So there were 3 licenses tendered out in 2018 for cultivation of cannabis in Germany, and the idea was to have an entire domestic supply chain. And as an operator in the space, as a cultivator, as an importer, as a processing company, Demican, we really saw this as a big challenge, and we were very happy to be able to start delivering last year. Now, domestic supply chain, I think it's important to stretch this one, because in the forecasted recreational cannabis space, it looks like in the draft law that all cannabis needs to be produced in Germany, processed in Germany, and we will have to have a complete domestic supply chain also in the recreational space. And I know many companies who started as importers, they don't like it because they will have to pivot their business model to either build their own cultivation space or rent or purchase production capacities at existing production sites, such as Demican or Aurora or Tilray, whether they want to. So I think, yeah, domestic supply chain was the biggest challenge. Now we have it. I think there's a fair chance for the German market to be able to live up to what we have to, which is to supply the German market. If we look at forecasts for the addressable market in the recreational space, it's about 400 tons, to be conservative. Of those 400 tons, how much we will see in a cannabis social club scenario, which is pillar 1 that Peter just introduced, maybe 10%, which is 40 tons. 40 tons, Demican, we could deliver half of that, 20 tons, easily on our production site by scaling up, and that within the first year of delivery. So when you hear people say, oh, we have to import because we have to be able to supply the demand, yeah, we don't have to. We can produce it in Germany. And there are also other market players. I look at Jörg here in the first row, who is building a production site. So there is initiative, there is entrepreneurs starting to jump into this gap, and we can do it. Now, looking at the medical space, what happened? We saw some nice growth, I would say, from 2021 to 2022. In 2021, we had 9 tons of medical cannabis being sold in pharmacies. In 2022, we don't have official numbers, but if you extrapolate the official numbers until September 2022, we had 11.4 tons. That is 26% of growth. It's a small medical market. But even if we don't like the draft law for recreational cannabis because it imposes many challenges for us as operators and market players, I think there is a chance to actually fight the black market and grow interesting business models.
Thank you. So let's jump back over to you, Kai. What do you think? Do you believe there's a possibility to establish a legal framework from out of Germany for Europe also?
No. Cannabis can't be regulated in the EU as it stands right now. If you look at countries like Sweden or Finland or whatever, they have such a conservative approach to cannabis. There won't be a unanimous solution in the EU in terms of cannabis. I don't think so. So what's the option then? I had the chance to talk to Czech officials in April and in May and June. I was listening to Jindřich Wojciech, the federal drug commissioner, the pendant of Bukovina in the Czech Republic, and he was saying they are working on a law in the Czech Republic to legalize cannabis and to open a commercial route. And they exactly know what's going to happen, that there might be a problem with the EU Commission, with other member states, and they face that. They say, okay, yeah, let's get sued. Let's go to court. Let's take it to the ECG. Let's see what happens. And if the ECG finally decides after 5 years, we have our industry established here, and the industry won't vanish, won't disappear then anymore. And if they have some regulations or some guidelines we have to obey, okay, we will do that. But we will work on this commercial route. And we will do it. And they have a really interesting approach. They call it the Psychomodulatory Substances Act. Psychomodulatory means this will also cover low THC products, like in Switzerland, like up to 1% CBD flowers, like kratom. And it will also cover kratom, and you will implement the measures of regulation according to the danger of the substance. So if the substance is really dangerous, you will have more regulation. If it is less dangerous, you will have less regulation. And I think this is a very, very modern approach to cannabis policy in terms of health issues, but also in terms of human rights, so of freedom of person to use substances. And this is the only way. So small countries like, I heard Slovenia has some initiatives. I heard last night the Czech Republic has to move forward. It's not the big countries showing the EU how to regulate cannabis. It will be the small countries who move forward and find ways to circumvent these still stand in the EU. And at the latest point, it has to be the courts, but not the member states. There won't be a unanimous solution. It's single countries moving forward, or at least the ECG has to decide on that. And if you have facts, like you have an established market in the Czech Republic after 5 years, you can't draw back the clock then anymore.
Peter, maybe also for you, how do you think that the cannabis legalization efforts in Germany will affect existing industries, but also the illegal market, and how will this legal framework also maybe affect changes in the EU regulatory framework regarding cannabis?
Yeah, let's start with the last part of the 3 questions. Indeed, as you pointed out, Kai, there are a number of member states who see it positively what the Germans are doing. The approach of October 2022 was very much supported by the Czech Republic anyway. However, there are other member states who are relatively conservative, or to say at least against the legalization of recreational cannabis. There are also larger countries. Germany would not go the route as you described it for the Czech Republic, because Germany lost big times before the European Court of Justice in other subject matters just recently. And as such, Germany is not going to take that route. So it's more a cautious approach which they are taking. Coming back to your second question, well, the actual argument of the legalization in Germany was to attack the illicit market. And if you look into the first pillar, the question is that really the right instrument to do it? If you allow a home grow, if you allow cannabis cultivation, of course under the government control, but as I said, non-profit, it's still economically questionable whether this will work, may not be a good approach towards the illicit market and for the protection of the youth. I'm going to question that, frankly speaking. The second pillar, with regard to the scientific pilot projects, which we see in other countries happening as well, in particular, for example, in Switzerland. Germany is thinking about very much the same model. I believe that this is even my preferred solution, take into consideration the legal framework which we have within the European Union. Canada didn't have that problem. When they actually legalized in 2019, they had just the UN conventions. They're getting warning letters every year from the International Narcotics Board, but they actually ignore that. Though that was easier for them to implement, because if you question why is Germany taking that approach, that's because of the Schengen Agreement and the respective protocols which have been released and which have confirmed that still the European Union is following the prohibition of cannabis. And coming back to the last part of your question, I don't see that very much happening within the European Union. We will see more and more approaches towards the legalization of recreational cannabis within certain European countries, but this will take some time. And Germany is believing that with the experience they are having within these two pillar models for a period of 4 years, they have sufficient proof that the legalization has a positive impact on the society, has a positive impact on the attacking the illicit market, which we see indeed growing every year. And of course, what you can buy on the illicit market has in certain aspects nothing to do with any kind of quality, high quality cannabis products, cannabis flowers as we see it, which are manufactured, for example, by Demikan and the other local cultivators here in Germany.
Thank you very much. So Cornelius, what do you think, how will the cannabis regulation also impact existing industries like the medicinal cannabis industry in Germany, for example?
Well, if we look at Canada or United States, we can assume that certain product categories will contract in the sense of, for example, flower. We already have between 30 to 50% of self-paying patients, most of them. One can fairly assume are consumers and not are necessarily treating pain issues. So we will see a decline in flower sales, that's for sure, after an initial increase. Why is that? Because what Peter described about how they want to legalize the recreational market, it's putting cannabis away from a narcotic status to a non-narcotic. And prescriptions will very likely at least double or triple in the beginning. And once the cannabis social clubs are then open for prescription and for becoming a member and actually buying product, then we will certainly see in the product category of flower a steep decline. I don't see necessarily a big change for extracts. So in the medical cannabis space, you have flower, you have extracts, you have ready-made pharmaceuticals. For extracts, ready-made pharmaceuticals, I don't see that much change. Now, if you look at the market players, many of them have been set up to not only serve the medical space, but potentially also be a big player in the recreational space. Some of the market players want to stay in the medical space and say that very clearly. Others, such as Demikan, we founded this company with a clear view on regulation in Canada and the United States, and we saw medical cannabis will be legalized first, very likely, and recreational cannabis eventually will follow, and that was the initial plan from the beginning. So for those who want to pivot, I mentioned earlier, if they want to play in the first round, they have to become domestic cultivators or get access to domestic product, which will be a challenge, I guess, for many, mostly a time challenge. I think a fair assumption for anybody starting now, to get a building permit, to get the funding, to build the facility, to get the cultivars, to do test runs, you need at least 2 years. So this will be what everybody's had will be around.
Thank you very much. I would open first like a warm round of applause for the panelists. And then I would hand over, because I bet there are many questions in that regard for the German market, so let's have a little bit more time for questions.
Oh, look, they're all excited. Okay, I'm coming. By the way, when we take the break after this panel for coffee and refreshments, we invite you to visit our exhibitors, 3C, NZTE, Tallman Group, Vivaldi's, Nabi, and the state of Victoria in Australia. Please help our exhibitors out. And now, the question.
Hi, good morning. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if I should ask for my money back. I come from South Africa. We have over 90 licenses awarded by the regulator, and most of the talk, fueled by the government, as one might call it, is that South Africa is potentially a huge contributor to the global cannabis scene. And of course, Germany takes prize of place as the market to which all of Africa should aspire to export. From what I'm hearing here, unless I misunderstood, Germany is actually closing down, and Europe potentially thereafter, with regards to allowing the import of cannabis. Let's talk medical cannabis at this point in time. But there is a huge developing capacity for cannabis growing in Africa, and particularly in South Africa, under the illusion that we grow it better, we have better land race, we do it cheaper, our currency is feeble, neither the Canadians nor the Europeans know how to grow cannabis like we do, and therefore the future is ahead of us. This is just a belief. From what I'm hearing here, this is simply not the case. It's all illusory. The biggest market is going to grow it for itself, call it what you want to, self-protection, and therefore Africa has to look to itself. Mind you, apparently we smoke 3 tons a day in South Africa, but still, recreational cannabis isn't legal just yet. The clubs have not been approved by the courts, and those of us who are medical cannabis cultivators have invested a great deal at the highest end, seeking EU GMP certification, by the way, under the advice of European consultants, and this all looks like it's nonsense.
It's tough. It's tough.
So everybody here is very aware that many countries have been scaling up, especially to be able to supply Germany and Europe with world-class, high-quality, EU GMP-grade cannabis. And I think they will be able to continue for the medical space. This is clear in the draft law. You can export raw material, send it to operators, processors such as Demican. We transform it into EU GMP grade cannabis that can be sold in the German market, in the European market, or any equivalent market with EU GMP requirements. But for the domestic recreational cannabis market, it will be domestic only supply chain. This is what says the law. I don't judge it. I mean, obviously I'm happy about it, but this is what we have.
And let me add, there is still huge potential in the German medical market. We are far away from any kind of market saturation. There's a lot of more potential here. What are the hurdles for physicians to prescribe cannabis currently. There are a number of hurdles, but it is, of course, also, it's a narcotic, number one. Number two, the information which the physicians have, and we have just discussed with a greater group of physicians about the possibilities to prescribe cannabis. What are the preconditions? When can a physician prescribe cannabis? What are the regulations for that? We need more education, I think, and that's part actually calling the industry, more education of the physicians to feel more comfortable to prescribe cannabis as a medicine. There are lots of potential in there, and still I believe that for the medical market there is still the need of imports. The medical market also in the future with regard to this high quality EU GMP certified products will probably not be satisfied by the current domestic market. We will definitely see imports in the future. We don't know what is the future of medical cannabis cultivation in Germany. It's not yet. Maybe you know more than I, but Cornelius, I have not seen anything from the Bay Farm yet in which way they will renew or increase the respective quotas which you have, because you know that the cultivators in Germany have a limit of 10.4 tons for a period of 4 years, plus an additional 10%, if I'm not mistaken. That is only a small part of what the medical market is actually needing. That's the reason why we are looking into, even in the future, imports. So there is space for improvement.
Yeah, let me add to that. There is most of the medical cannabis import companies in Germany, they have done their sourcing globally. So they have stable supply chains now, be it from Colombia, be it from Canada, be it from South Africa. But I wouldn't only look, there is potential in the German market, especially if cannabis is moved from the Narcotics Act. Prescription would probably rise, double, triple, whatever, but still a very small market. It's only 25 tons were imported and dispensed, 11 tons dispensed to the pharmacies. There is still potential, but I wouldn't look only to Germany. Almost every European country is setting up a medical cannabis program. And if you look at the UK, they have only 5 indications. In Germany, there is no limit of indications and won't be afterwards. So look at the other EU states as well, which are setting up medical cannabis programs for chances to business or to export.
And I must add, there is maybe hope for those producing outside of Europe, that the law initiative might change. This is possible. And one way it could change is they try to ease access to cannabis by making it an OTC. So that could be a potential way, but this is not what is proposed right now. So I'm just pointing out at the potential alternative path. But right now, as I said, it's domestic only.
And maybe one more remark to that. The second pillar, the scientific pilot projects, of course, have also a need for supply. So the question is, do we see under the first pillar the cultivation associations popping up like mushrooms everywhere, serving the needs of their members? And who is going to serve later on the scientific pilot projects? How wide will they spread it out into Germany? Does every city has these implementation of scientific pilot projects? Has it every state? We see that in Switzerland. We have 2 projects which started actually earlier this year in Switzerland, in Basel and in Zurich. And we will probably learn from that a little bit more. But Germany is significantly larger than Switzerland, so we'll see how this market, how this demand will be then served. This will be interesting to see.
Okay, this is targeted mainly for you, Cornelius, but I see that Peter is in agreement that there's some kind of importation in the future. Cornelius, you're not for importation. Let me just say this. I spent 5 years in Jamaica recently. I saw the program from the beginning to disaster. A lot of good things did happen, but that's a medical program. But they make it easy. You go into the dispensary, you make a phone call to a doctor that's on board, and they give you your medical card right there, and then you purchase your flower or your other products. When it comes to consumption, when Europe finally takes these steps, baby steps now, I suppose, the consumption's going to be huge, like millions of pounds a month. The craft grows, the grow that you talked about, that you provide, what would you say, 40 tons a year, something like that? That doesn't make a dent in the overall consumption that you're going to have. So importation, there's so many countries that are better geographically to grow than in Germany. You're going to have very high costs here because of energy. You have to build, facilities, buildings, whatnot. I'm talking about Colombia mainly. They've been shipping for 100 years. So my question is, Cornelius, would you be open to the idea that importation has a place as maybe a contingency plan, but we shouldn't, I think, politic against importation? Because I don't think you import coffee, you don't grow coffee here or bananas or other things. You go to the geographical area where it best grows at the most economical prices and the volume that you're going to need.
Yeah, so for the medical space, for sure, this will continue. The government hasn't said anything that contradicts this assumption that importation will be possible, and we agree that there will be an increase in prescriptions once it's delisted from being a narcotic. On the recreational side, it is what the government proposes, domestic-only supply chain. And I know it's hard to hear, but this is what's black on white. And this is in line what happened with the legalization of recreational cannabis in Canada. No imports. I hear you loud and clear, but it is how regulation moves, and it's what is being proposed here in Germany.
And let me add that under the first pillar, there is no need for importation. The first pillar is home grow and the cultivation associations. So there is no need even for any kind of cultivation for recreational purposes here in Germany at this point in time under the first pillar, if it comes into place. The second pillar is different. There we may have to see what's going to happen. Still, the plan of the government is domestic cultivation will serve even that market on the second pillar, which are the scientific pilot projects.
And
okay, I'm sorry to cut you off. We're running out of time. We have one more. I'm going to try to slide one more question in because he's been very patient. And then everyone else, when we go for coffee and pastries, you can pile around these guys and pester them to your heart's desire.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Nicholas from Colombia. So I wouldn't go as far as saying that we grow the best cannabis, as the guy from South Africa said, but we're pretty good at large scale and good premium quality flowers at a good price. I don't want to go too deep into the 100 years of exports of marijuana, from my country, so I'm just going to put that aside. But I want to say this. I agree that the government is saying that it has to be domestic only for recreational space, right? But we're not thinking about the consumers in Germany when it comes to pricing, And I know that you guys as pioneers and voices to be heard here in the Germany legislation to be done, I think it will be good and very important to be heard in the part that probably some imports are going to be needed in order to accomplish that market in a good price and in a good quality. We are very aware that German cultivators are not going to be producing at a very affordable price. So if we put some imports from countries that are doing a good job, could make actually a good point for consumers.
Yeah, thank you for raising this point, production costs. I love it because there's a huge misunderstanding here. Demican produces locally, domestically, and it's about 1/4 of our top line. And the other 3/4 come from importation. So we have several global suppliers, and I know the prices for which I buy, and I know the prices for which I produce domestically. And we produce full production costs below €2 at 1 ton annual production capacity. So if we scale, that goes down. And I buy some product below €2 EU GMP grade or raw material, but most of them are more expensive. And I know they might be produced cheaper, but if you look at the market prices, we're actually cheaper in producing it ourselves here in Germany. So please keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to cut everybody off. I know you all had a lot of questions. It's a great panel. Let's hear it. And